Thank you so very much. Y'all hear me all right? I'm working up here. You hear me all right? Nothing wrong with this room. 40 push-ups and a 4-mile run wouldn't cure, I'll tell you. Well, I don't know, but after that introduction, if I was smart, I would shut up and say, are there any questions, and go from there. But Congressman Rogers, I want to thank you for that thoughtful introduction. More importantly, I want to thank you for the privilege of the platform and this gracious welcome from Eastern Kentucky. It is good to be back. It is good to be back. What the Congressman didn't mention was I got commissioned in 1976, and the first place the Army sent me was to Kentucky for the first 5 years of my Army career. And as I was driving back here yesterday, I was struck by the number of funeral details I had to come and do in Eastern Kentucky, and the fact that this is such a special place for our nation. So it's just a gracious welcome you've given me, and it's just such a joy to be here. Thank you all so very, very much. Now, let's get to work. In about 2 minutes, I have to answer 3 critical questions that every audience has when a speaker is standing up in front of them. The 3 questions are, who's this person, what's this person going to talk about, and why should I care? Well, the Congressman's handled who I am. I'm a soldier for life. Came in the Army, was going to do 4 years and get out. Something happened. And 33 years later, my mom is standing there looking at me at a retirement ceremony going, I had no idea. So that's kind of okay. What am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about leading teams in challenging times. I'm going to talk about the lessons that the national treasures called soldiers that you entrusted to me taught me in those 33 years. Why should you care? Come on, General, I'm not in the Army. I'm not in a formation after this is over. I'm just a little office. 4 or 5 people are trying to get something done in Eastern Kentucky. The Army's not relevant to what I'm doing. So why should I care? You should care because leadership is the secret sauce. Leadership is the difference between a task being done okay and a task being done really well. And I saw it time and time again in the service. I'd see a unit getting ready to go on an operation, and we'd give them everything they needed. They needed 100 people, we gave them 105. They needed $110, we gave 150. They needed 5 training days, we gave them 20. Whatever resource they needed, we gave them. They gave them the newest equipment, everything. And if they were not well led, none of that mattered. They failed. I'd see other units, they needed 100 folks, they had 70. They needed 10 training days, we looked at them and said, 4 is the best we got. But for some reason, if you needed it on Friday, they gave it to you on Wednesday and said, is there anything else I can do for you? And the difference in those 2 units was leadership. So we're going to talk about that today and how you lead folks in tough times. Does that work for you? I'm working up here. Does that work for you? All right. Here's SOAR's mission: to expand job creation, enhance regional opportunity, innovation, identity, improve the quality of life, and support all those who are going to achieve those goals in Appalachian Kentucky. Now, who could argue with that? Nobody. So how come it's hard? It's hard because you got to do it in challenging times. You got to do it when the heat's high, the outcome's uncertain, and the pressure's on. And everybody's got an idea about what right looks like, and the problem, the challenge sometimes is aligning all those ideas together. You ever been in a meeting, and you're sitting around a table, and one guy says, well, that meeting went well, and walks out, and everybody else is out in the hallway going, I hope somebody's going to do something about that. That's kind of what happened. So we're going to talk about that today. But you got to do it in challenging times. What I'm going to tell you is there have always been times like these. That is not my younger brother. June 1976, I'd been commissioned 3 weeks in the United States Army. The only thing I knew how to do was stand in front of that sign and put on a uniform. That was about it. I was clueless. I couldn't have poured water out of a boot if you printed tip on the heel. I had no idea. I joined the Army for the simplest of reasons. Everybody looks at me now and says, wow, you two-star general. You had a plan. I did not have it. Yeah, I had a plan. Here was my plan. My father was an Irish immigrant from County Sligo, Ireland, and so was my mother. They came to America. They both had 8th grade educations in 1949. They looked around and they figured out if they want to make something of themselves. You all familiar with the TV show Flip This House? Yeah, my father was in the Flip This Bar and Restaurant in New York City. And he was flipping places. His hiring philosophy, I was the oldest of 4 boys, his hiring philosophy was, I'd rather breed my help than hire it. You got the idea, okay? And I remember I was 16 years old and I was mopping the floor at the bar on 39th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues. And my father leans across the bar, 16 years old, he looks at me and says, you better do a good job there, Vincent. This is all gonna be yours someday. And I remember reaching down to squeeze that mop head, and I said to myself, Jesus, Mary, and sweet St. Joseph, I got to get plan B. The Army was my plan B. I joined the Army not because what I wanted to do, because I knew what I didn't want to do. And people see me working hard in the Army, they'd go, you're working awfully hard. I'd say, because I know what's going to happen if this Army thing doesn't work out. I know where I'm going back to. So what I want to talk to you about is the times I've seen from 1976 when I came in the Army to now. Now, there are a couple of busy charts. Hang with me. I'm a professional. I've done this before. We're going to start in the upper left-hand chart of the chart, upper left-hand corner. We're going to work around clockwise. You with me? Hang with me now. You type A's are going to get ahead of me. Don't do that. All right, let's see if we can do this. I came in the Army in 1976. Iran, Iran was our #1 ally in the Persian Gulf when I came in the United States Army. I went to school in 1976 at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland with Iranian officers in my class. Boy, how things have changed. Gerald Ford was the president, lost re-election to Jimmy Carter. 1976 was also the 200th birthday of the United States of America. And I was in my office at Aberdeen Proving Ground. It was just before the 4th of July weekend, and my sergeant, who'd been in Vietnam 3 different times, looked at me and said, what are you going to do this weekend, Lieutenant? I said, well, I'm going up to home in New York City, 200th birthday of America, Statue of Liberty, big celebration, that's where I'm going. And that 3-time Vietnam veteran looked at me and said, you're going to wear your uniform? I said, well, yeah. He said, sir, I wouldn't do that. It makes them nervous. Boy, have things changed. Boy, have things changed, but it wasn't always that way. Left 1976, all of a sudden we had the Iranian hostage crisis. The Pope was Polish and elected in the 1970s, right there. And 1978, Joe B. Hall and Jack Gibbons win the NCAA championship. And Jerry Brown's the governor of California when I come in the Army. Yeah, you got that, huh? You'll see that again. 1980s, the Iranian hostage crisis ends. Ronald Reagan and a gentleman named Hal Rogers are elected to the United States to serve us. That arrow that's going up isn't a good thing. That arrow reflects Captain Boles looking at Mrs. Boles and saying, honey, this Army thing's a good deal. We should stay in. And she said, but mortgage rates are 16.5% and you still can't afford a house. 16.5% mortgage rates in the 1980s. I tell that to young audiences now and they're thinking 4%'s a stretch. 16.5%, for a $100,000 house, your mortgage payment was $1,650. Wasn't always that way. Solidarity rises its head in Poland along with other emerging freedom movements. Gorbachev comes to power. George Bush is elected in 1988 as the president. And the Berlin Wall falls down in 1989. And also during the 1980s, Kentucky has a Final Four team. I know. 1990s, if you're a young captain, you're worried about going to Somalia or the Balkans. We have Desert Shield, Desert Storm hit us. The 91% under George Bush, I want to make sure you understand that. In June of 1991, when Desert Shield, Desert Storm ended, George Bush's approval rating was 91%. 91%. Wow. 17 months later, he loses re-election to a combination of Bill Clinton and Ross Perot. How fast things fall. When Bill Clinton gets inaugurated in January 1993, there are 100 sites on the World Wide Web. I'd tell you how many there are now, but it'll change by the time I finish the sentence. The economy booms in the 1990s. I put that Microsoft symbol down in the bottom corner because in 1997, there's a guy named Nathan Myhrvold. That name doesn't mean much to you. Let me tell you what he does. In 1997, he's the Chief Technology Officer for Microsoft. Yeah, you're paying attention now. He's a pretty powerful dude, isn't he? I mean, you go to a tech geek conference and Nathan's talking, you want to see. You want to listen to what Nathan's saying where the future's going. And in 1997, Nathan said, I can predict the future. And he looked at the Microsoft board of directors and he said, I've checked and I've got it. Apple is already dead. I want to ask Nathan how his iZoom's working right about now. Also in the 1990s, 1996, 1998, under Rick Pitino and Tubby Smith, Kentucky brings 2 national championships. And on 31 December 1999, what we know as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics goes away and Russia arises. Y2K. I don't know what you were doing on 31 December 1999, but here's what I was doing. I was sitting in an operations center in the Pentagon at 15 minutes before midnight, and I'm watching that clock tick. And to say people were nervous was an understatement. It was pretty high intensity, high pressure. And 5 minutes before midnight, tension gets a little high. 5 minutes after midnight, things start to ease up a little. Because we're checking, y'all think it's funny, but we're checking things like, are our missiles still where they're supposed to be? Has anybody pushed a button they weren't supposed to push on our side or their side? And we're watching this all day, and after about 15 minutes, people start really high-fiving each other and jumping around, and 2 groups jump up in the room. One group jumps up and says, see, I told you all those fixes we spent all that money on worked. And the other group jumped up and said, see, I told you not a damn thing's going to happen. We didn't have to spend anything. What should bother you is that 18 years later, we still don't know who the truth was. I put that up with the Congressman's indulgence, but that is the Democratic National Convention in 2000 in Los Angeles. Why do I put that up? Because a young man from Illinois goes to that convention and is told, sorry, you can't get in. We don't have a credential for you. His name was Barack Obama. 2000, we didn't let him in the room. They didn't let him in. They said, sorry. He's written about his book. He went up the door, said, I'm here. They said, sorry, you're not on the list. Hit the road. 536 people in the state of Florida decide the 2000 election. Don't tell me your vote's not important. On 9/11, an entity with no standing army, no standing government, no standing economy attacks the United States of America and kills over 3,000 people. And our view of what combat and what combat operations look like radically changes. We go to Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, longest wars in our nation's history of 243 years. Microsoft emerges. We start in 2007 to have the growth of something called the FANG economy. And it scares a lot of people. But you're pretty fortunate because you have a congressman that's on the cutting edge of that. And the FANG economy stands for Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. That economy starts skyrocketing in 2000. It scares a lot of people in the industrial world because it doesn't build anything. They don't know how it grows. They don't know how it works. The people that understand the FANG economy are the people that are going to own the future. That gentleman who couldn't get admitted to the Democratic National Convention in 2000 goes and gets inaugurated in 2009 and 1.5 million people come. The point is, don't tell me you know who the president's going to be in 2024, because it's changing. Kentucky again, another national champion, the Elite Eight in the 2000s. And then now it's the 2010s. We've got the Tea Party, Affordable Care Act, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom. We have Governor Bevin and Lieutenant Governor Hooper. We have SOAR starting in 2013, now celebrating its 5th anniversary. We still have Operation Iraqi Freedom. Now we have ISIS to worry about. We have Kim Jong-un, Iran, the election of Donald Trump. Kentucky has a 2012 national championship. And Jerry Brown's the governor of California. Well, General, we really appreciate that run-through history lesson, and you know, my class would appreciate it and everything else. Really appreciate that, but what's the point? I mean, we're about SOAR. We're about getting things done. We're about, you know, shaping our Appalachian region. What's this history thing got to do with all that? Here's my point. It's hard to predict the future, isn't it? If you'd have told that young man in 1976, here's what the future looks like for you. The Pope's going to be Polish, the Berlin Wall's going to fall down, you're going to go to war, but it's going to be in Iraq. And one of our worst enemies by the time you make general is going to be Iran, and you're going to have to spend a lot of time worrying about that. I would have sent you for your analysis someplace. But that all happened. You can't predict the future. But I see organizations as I go around the country and speak and consult. I see individuals and leaders as I go around the world and consult. They are paralyzed to do anything, and when I ask them why, they say, because I don't know what the future holds. Nobody knows what the future holds. The leadership challenge is not to predict the future. The leadership challenge is to build an organization that can handle the future when it breaks upon you. Because in tough times, people look to leaders. It's easy to lead. When it's 70 degrees out, you got 3 email messages in your inbox, and the only challenge you got is your financial officer's running up and down the hallway going, I don't know what to do with all this cash. Life is pretty simple. Leadership's pretty simple, eh? Don't screw it up, your leadership model, eh? But well, as I said, when the heat's high, the pressure's on, and the outcome's uncertain, that's when people turn to leaders. That's why you need to turn to each other. Because you got to build teams that are going to handle the future that's coming at you. Because I don't know what the next 40 years are holding, like those last 40 years, but they're coming. They're coming whether you're ready or not. So what organizations like SOAR do is they help you get ready. They help you get ready for the future that's coming, rather than wait and be impacted by it, you're impacting your future. Two things get in the way of good leadership. Two things I found get in the way of good leadership. First, management doesn't equal leadership. People forget that. I see a lot of people that are great managers, they couldn't lead anybody anywhere. Management is a clipboard and a task list. Management stuff you gotta do. I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. That's all it is, a clipboard and a task list. There's a lot of people that are good at that. Management is directive. Leadership is connective. How do you connect with folks? Leadership is how you get that stuff done. Leadership is the approach you bring to problems. Leadership is the approach you bring to people. I ask leaders when I'm consulting with them or coaching, I say, what type of leader are you? And they go, I'm a democratic leader, I'm a dictatorial leader, I'm a whatever. And they say, what do you mean? I say, well, I got one question for you. Are you a here I am leader? Or are you a there you are leader? Here I am leaders, it's all about who? What about me? How am I looking? There you are leaders, it's about those and the folks you lead. Those are the people that are connecting. So I don't know what the future's bringing, but I know the answer to the future's right here in this room. It's what you'll do, and it's what you'll do together. The other reason leadership gets a challenge is we tend to think about leadership in terms of what works for me. How I like to be led, how I like to work, how I like to get things done. And when you're leading folks, You got to think about what works for them. It was interesting, when I started speaking to corporate association audiences about 10 years ago, I'd go around and there'd be a Q&A session, somebody put their hand up. And the question goes something like this: General, I got this problem. Usually a baby boomer, older. So what's the problem? He said, I got these millennials working for me. They ain't getting it. They're all techie and understand. I don't get it. So we talk about that a little bit. I give them a couple thoughts and advice, because one of the good things about the Army is I work with them every day. Well, now I'm speaking to corporate association audiences, the hands are going up. And it's a very well-dressed, polite millennial puts his hand up and says, General, can you give me a hand? I said, what is it? He said, well, you're about the age. I got these baby boomers working for me. And he said, they're not getting it. I said, what do you mean? He says, they come in. He said, now they're good. They're nice enough people. They come in at 7 o'clock. They sit at their desk. They bring their lunch. They eat lunch at their desk. They work all day till 5 o'clock, but they don't get anything done. They're slow. You give them technology and they don't get it done. It takes a long time. Do you have any advice here? And I said, yeah. And now it's very interesting to watch. Millennials are getting to the age now where they're having children. And it's very interesting to watch. There were no controls, very few controls over millennials and technology, were there? They just used tech whenever they wanted to. Watch a millennial and their children in technology. I walked into one of their homes and there was a basket there. I said, what's that for? That's where the tech stuff goes when you come in the house. You don't bring it to the dinner table. You don't bring it to the family room. We don't have one of these situations where we're all in the same house and you're texting me a note. So it's kind of interesting. So every generation changes. Folks say millennials are different. And I tell baby boomers, go, millennials are different. I go, shut up. You a millennial too? They go, no, I wasn't. I said, yeah, ask your parents. My mom and dad, 1965, lying in bed looking at each other saying, we have failed. He stays on the phone all day and he likes the Rolling Stones instead of Perry Como. Where'd we go wrong? Perry Como, you can look it up. But we tend to think about leadership in terms of what works for us. Step back for a second, look at who's working with you, what works for them. What connects with them? What butters their biscuit? Work from their perspective. Now, it's a busy chart. Stick with me. I've done this before. Every organization I have ever been in 33 years in the service, and now 10 years in the corporate sector, every single organization I've been around, big or small, falls into 3 groupings. Every organization. How many each group? Kind of up to you. But here are the 3 groups. First group over here on the left-hand side, I call them the H2s. They're the heroes and the heroines. They come early. They stay late. They're the people, if you ask them 2 questions, they give you 5 answers. And you say, how come? They say, because you're going to need to know these other 3 things. They're the kind of people when you're on the phone and they're walking by at the end of the day and they're walking out the door, they hear you talking about something they're working on, they stop what they're doing, execute an about face, put their briefcase down, pick up their folder, and when you hang up the phone, they're going, what do you need? They're the kind of people, when they're at your door saying, you got a minute? You got a minute. You been around folks like that? Yeah. If you're in this room, you probably are folks like that. They got their sleeves up, they just figure stuff out. Let me break this to you gently. It's in their DNA. Your leadership probably had very little to do with them being that way. Your leadership challenge with those folks is don't get in their way and help them, because they tend to be good candidates for burnout. Because they think coming to you for help is an admission of weakness and they don't want to bother you. So they just keep working it. And the first couple of times you say, you need any help with that, what do they say? Nope, I got it. Hang in there. About the 4th time you come by, they'll look and go, well, if you could, then you can fix something for them. That's about all you got to do with those folks. They're just great. The other thing you got to worry about is someone's going to try to steal them. So you got to worry about those folks. They're your H2s, heroes and heroines. I'm going to take you to the far right-hand side. That is not an approved military acronym at the top. GPTHTTY, but it works. This does not have the endorsement, by the way, of the Society for Human Resource Management. I know, because I briefed this to them once, and the silence was deafening, and I have not been invited back. But GPTHTTY stands for this. That's the other group. God put them here to test you. Oh, you know those folks, yeah. They're the folks who can tell you why it's too expensive, too hard, it wasn't my job. They, whoever they did this, I didn't do this. And it's too expensive, and they're the people who will go to their, if you want to get them excited, and at 5 o'clock workday ends, go to their cubicle at 4:53 and start a conversation. That's the most excited you're going to get them all day. Let me break this to you gently. Your leadership style had very little to do with them being that way. It's in their DNA. Somehow on their life journey, they got wired that way. A mom, a dad, a coach, a teacher, a first boss, whatever. They just got wired to be that way. Doing the minimum is what they're comfortable doing. That's just kind of the way they are. And you could talk for a year and a day. Have you ever talked to bosses and they go, I'm spending 50% of my time with the bottom 10% of my people? You ever heard that? They like it. They like being in an organization where they get the boss's attention all the time. You ain't going to change them much either. Your leadership challenge with them is make sure they're not sucking up your time, because they're not changing. And people say, well, you don't understand how that works. I was in the Army for 33 years. Give me a break. I know how our bureaucracy works. The deal you got to do with those folks, you got to be objective, ruthlessly objective. I need this on Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Guaranteed. Wednesday at 1:59, they will say, I got a problem. No, now you got two problems. It's not done and me. Now you just got to fix it. Be ruthless with them. That's it. And the reason I want you to be ruthless with them and not spend a lot of time with these folks is that group in the middle. That group in the middle is a question mark. They're making up their mind. They haven't decided which side they're on yet. My advice to you as a leader is don't spend your time on the right-hand side. Find those folks in the middle. Where do I find those folks in the middle, General? The folks on the left-hand side know who they are, because they use them to get their work done. Watch the new hires. Watch the folks who come in who are new. Spend a lot of time with them. Ask them 2 questions. All you got to do, I have leaders all the time say, well, I want to know how I'm doing. So I'm going to go around and ask everybody, how am I doing? Don't do that. Don't ask people how you're doing. Don't. There's 2 reasons you shouldn't do it. First, they think you should know. You laughing, but I'm serious. They think you should know. Second, that's a pretty nerve-wracking question, isn't it? How am I doing? What's the right answer? What kind of a day is he having? I'm not sure. Well, oh, great, boss. Oh, you're great, chief. Love you. And they walk away, tell their wife that night, you wouldn't believe what happened to me at work today. Instead, ask 2 questions if you want to know how you're doing. Only 2 questions you got to ask if you want to know how you're doing. And you can do this in SOAR. Walk up to people and ask 2 questions. 1, what are you working on and how's it going? That's all you got to do. If they can tell you what they're working on and they can tell you how it's going, you've learned a lot about your organization. Because if they can't tell you what they're working on and they can't tell you how it's going, that's going to tell you something about your leadership style. Spend your time with those folks in the middle. My question to you is, which way do you as a leader make it easier? Do you make it easier for those folks in the middle to slide to the GPTHTTY team? Or do you make them easier to slide to H2s? Whichever way you make easy is the way they're going to go. Fair enough? I'm working up here. Yeah, fake it till you feel it. You'll be all right. I want to focus on a couple of critical leadership areas that I find are critical with teams. I call these FARs. It's my acronym. I've used it. I had a boss that used it. I've had it for as long as I've been in the Army. It stands for flat ass rules. That's it. These are ground rules. What does that mean? It means these work if it's day or if it's night, if it's hot, if it's cold, if you're tired or not tired, if the enemy's coming right now or the enemy's coming in 2 hours. It doesn't matter. These things stand the test of time and work. And I'd advise, if you're thinking about where your leadership challenges are, start here. First, remember one thing in leadership. Activity does not equal achievement. Activity does not equal achievement. I don't care what you're busy at. I care about what you're accomplishing. So if you get people come up to you and go, I'm busy. I'm busy. Say, what'd you accomplish today? Let me get back to you on that. No, go away. Don't mistake activity for achievement. Don't worry about your folks being busy. Worry about what your folks, and worry about what you're doing to get in the way of accomplishing things. There was a cardinal, the Archbishop of New York, I'm a New Yorker, Cardinal Archbishop of New York, Francis O'Connor. And Archbishop O'Connor, before he became the Archbishop of New York, he was a Navy chaplain for 33 years. And he was asked once, a reporter asked him once a question after he was the cardinal, said, what do you pray for? And the cardinal, of course, gave the usual answers at the beginning. Well, I pray for world peace, and I pray for things to do well and everything else. And the reporter pushed a little bit, said, no. What do you pray for yourself? Not all that other stuff. What do you pray for? And he said, well, I got a little prayer on my shaving mirror every morning that I've had since I was in the Navy, and I say that prayer every day. Lord, don't let me get in the way of somebody trying to do the right thing. Don't let me get in the way of somebody trying to do the right thing. As a leader, don't let activity equal achievement. Don't focus on activity, focus on achievement, and ask yourself as a leader, if they're not achieving something, what am I doing that's getting in the way? Back to the previous chart, am I making it easier or am I making it hard? Second, the answer is at the intersecting points. You will find people that are working their piece, they're probably doing a pretty good job working their piece of the puzzle. We call them in the corporate world, they call stovepipes in organizations. I find things in the stovepipes are working pretty good. Folks in the HR stovepipe are doing the stuff HR folks do. Folks in the finance stovepipe know what they're doing, and they're doing that. The sales stovepipe is doing it. And sorry. The problem with stovepipes is stovepipes have a function, is to keep smoke out of the room. Stovepipes are not designed to talk to other stovepipes. That's your job as a leader. How do you get those stovepipes interacting? So if you have something that you're worried about how it's going, go to the intersecting points. Go to where those organizations have to intersect, where they have to interact. That's why places like this are so important and so critical, because you're intersecting and interacting together. It was a great guy. Like I said, I got born and raised in the restaurant business. There was a great restaurateur. There is a great restaurateur in New York named Danny Meyer. And he was asked once what was his secret to leadership and leading these great restaurants he had. He said, I really struggled as a leader until I learned this one thing. And I'd offer it to you. He said, I learned there's not a lot of things people can't do. There's very, very few things people and teams can't do. But I found there's a whole lot of things they won't do. And as a leader, I started making it my mission. When someone said they couldn't do something, I found out, is it something you really can't do? Because then I can train you. Or is it really something you just won't do? And I started finding out the difference in that was their attitudes. So know the difference between can't and won't. What things can't you do? And what things won't you do? And if somebody looks at you and says they can't do something, before you accept that, say, tell me more. I find I ask because 5 times. I can't do that. Because? Well, it's hard. Because? Well, it's really hard. Because? After my 4th because, one of 2 things happens. They learn something or they throw me out of the room, one of the 2. That's all right. The most critical thing you can do as a leader is take excuses away. Find out something. You got people that are working hard for you, and when you say, is everything going okay, they're normally usually going to tell you everything's great. Keep hanging in there. When you finally find a policy, a rule, a bureaucrat, or something that's getting in the way of accomplishing things, take that excuse away. Work that excuse and take it away. You will rise in their estimation as a leader further than anything else that you could do. That will make more of a difference to them. And then finally, decide to decide. Colin Powell, in his book, My American Journey, said leaders have to be comfortable making a decision with about 60% of the information. Because if you wait for perfect information, it's too late. Train's already left the station, enemy's already behind you, too late. So I'm from Huntsville, Alabama now, and the engineers in Huntsville hear that, and they high-five each other, and they get overjoyed. They go, great, decision-making is a mathematical certainty. Draw a line, get to 60%, make a decision. One problem with that. The 60% of information you need to make a decision is different than the 60% you need to make a decision. Is different than the 60% you need to make a decision. So when you're making decisions, my question I always ask is, do your folks know how you decide to decide? Do they know your decision criteria? Or do they have to spend their energy when you say you want something trying to figure out what you want rather than give you what you want? Take time to tell your folks how you're deciding to decide, how you make decisions, why it's important. Because if you tell them that, they'll move heaven and earth for you. And if you don't tell them that, you're going to have quite a challenge. I got one thought to leave you with from Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. This stuff isn't easy. If things that you were working on were easy, we'd contract it out and have somebody else do it. We're asking you to do it because it's tough. Because the heat's high and the pressure's on and the outcome's uncertain. But you're doing it because it's important. I'm very blessed to be here and be in your presence because I don't know what the future holds. But Congressman Rogers, I got to tell you, the future's in the most secure place you can be, and it's in the hands and the hearts of the people I've had the privilege to meet while I've been here. Thank you all so very much. Thank you for what you're doing. Please keep our soldiers and their families and our sailors and airmen and Marines in your prayers. They go for you. They think you're worth it. And take a moment to dedicate yourselves to being the type of citizens worthy of their service. They go for us. I was struck when I checked the records this morning. 114 national treasures from Kentucky have given, as Lincoln called it, their last full measure of devotion in this war we're fighting now. They went for us. Thank you so much for their service, that you've entrusted them to us. And thanks for what you're going to do for Kentucky. God bless you all. Thank you.